create as well. And so there's some really strong relationships that are forged in a Kāhui, a community practice type setting. And we're going to learn a little bit about a couple of Kāhui / communities of practice in today's webinar. So we have our guest speakers today. One is from the Bay of Plenty region, where our first supplier diversity Kāhui was created, the Bay of Plenty Kāhui. Then we have someone from our Wellington region, Kareena, and she's going to share a bit about how they have started a council-focused Kāhui in this year. And then also we have our guest speaker from across the ditch, Rina, who's been a long-standing member of the financial sector services Kāhui, community of practice in Australia, where it's a very sector space Kāhui or community of practice. And I know some of our attendees today have been able to attend one of those meetings, Mariano, and some of the financial sector buyers here in Aotearoa. And so, yeah, it's really an opportunity for us to learn about this community of practice type practice, I guess, framework, and how we can further adopt it and develop it here in Aotearoa as we continue down our supplier diversity pathway. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Cathy Allen from our Downer whānau here in the BOP. I've met Cathy two and a half years ago as I was working here in the Tauranga region for Amotai, and she attended our Making Sense Supplier Diversity workshop, and so she'll talk a bit about that. But Cathy has been a great advocate for Downer. Downer have been finalists as Buyer of the Year for the last 2 years. They're doing awesome mahi, and I love, Cathy, that you guys are doing some good work down the coast with kuru. I just went back home last week and I saw kuru right there in Tolaga Bay, and I was like, yay, one of the preferred suppliers for Downer. So really appreciate all the mahi you're doing. So I'll hand time over to you to introduce yourself and share with us, Cathy.
Well, thank you, Paul. Kia ora koutou, ko Cathy Allen ahau, kei Mount Maunganui te kāinga, he uri ahau no te ati hau nui a Pāpārangi, kei Downer ahau e mahi ana. Cool, so I've been with Downer for about 8 years and in construction for 15. I work in the new business space, so really kind of came into the supplier diversity area through that. Yeah, been part of the Bay of Plenty Kāhui for about 2.5 years, which was an extension of the Making Sense of Supplier Diversity workshop that I attended with Paul and other buyers in the region. So really it's just grown from there. Definitely not a supplier diversity specialist, but a big champion within Downer. So yeah, here to share that experience with you all today. Thanks for having me.
Tēnā koe, Cathy. Our next panelist or guest presenter today comes from the Wellington region with Kareena, and a little bit about my interaction with Kareena. She's a huge advocate down there in the Wellington region. She attended the workshop that Cathy presented on with Kāhui, and then reached out to me and was like, hey, Paul, I think we should try and do something. So I'll let her talk a bit more about that. But it's been great to work alongside Kareena and help wrangle in some of the other councils. And, as she talks about, as we kind of got into it, it was decided that we were going to look at that council focus and how we can work together and strengthen. So kia ora koe, Kareena.
Kia ora, Paul. Kia ora koutou, everyone. Ko Kareena tōku ingoa. Great to be here. So yes, I'm here from Greater Wellington Regional Council, not Wellington City Council, and I've got quite a bit of experience in this space. Actually, I have a specialised role at Greater Wellington, which is really exciting that they've created this role, and I focus on everything from supplier diversity through to newer things in New Zealand around modern slavery and living wage, and of course the environmental aspects as well. And Greater Wellington covers off public transport for the whole region, as well as land restoration and environmental protection as well. So there's heaps of really strong links through that mahi, especially with our mana whenua partners as well. So lots of opportunity for this work. And as part of that, yes, we worked with Paul, I think must have been last year, yes, to set up our Kāhui. And the Wellington region actually has a supplier diversity commitment called the Te Opoko o Te Ika Maui commitment. So that's why we started with our councils. We already had this commitment in place, and it was a way to really start to action that commitment as well. Cheers.
Kia ora, Kareena. Tēnā koe, nau mai hoki mai anō. And we're just going to move finally to our new addition to the team today. Again, a huge mihi, Rina, for coming in last minute to support Peter. I've spent a little bit of time with Rina through the communities of practice that Missy and I attended earlier this year, as we wanted to learn and bring more of that knowledge here to Aotearoa. And the first place that we go to when we want to bring more supplier diversity experience and expertise into Aotearoa are our cousins across the ditch with Supply Nation. And so, you know, Rina's had a stint there, but also has been in part of supplier diversity mahi for a while. And so wonderful to have you, Rina. I'll allow you to introduce yourself as well.
Okay. So for context, over 20 years in technology, 18 of that's been in procurement, and the last 10 of that's been focused on sustainability, so ESG, so the environment, social and governance. That's where supply diversity came in. I've mostly worked in the finance sector, and I wrote these responsible supply chain strategy for Suncorp. It was a 3-year piece of work and went from everything to capability uplift to actually setting targets and exceeding them in our supply diversity efforts. So really proud of the team and that legacy. Now I've got my own business. We've been in operation for about 18 months, and we focus on economic inclusion, but through engineering and transport planning and all that cool stuff, spatial analytics and stuff. So that gets a bit geeky. I won't go into that, but look, such a joy to spend some time with the Amotai team again. There's probably not much I don't know about the sector here in Australia, so hit me with your questions. And I just wanted to let you know, though, for context, I've created communities of practice within Suncorp, which were 300 people of supply managers. I also had a lot to do with the design and architecture with the Leadership Roundtable that Supply Nation currently manage, and that's an executive-focused community of practice. But the one I'll talk about today is the finance sector community practice, and then some of the stuff that I'm trying to pioneer in the entrepreneurial space as well, because I think that might be a bit relevant, maybe if we've got some people interested in what it looks like for suppliers on the other side of things. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Beautiful, and yes, definitely that supplier space. I'd love to wānanga a bit more about that with you in subsequent hui as well. So thank you again, Rina, and again a huge warm welcome to our 3 panelists as we go through today's kōrero. So for the rest of our viewing whānau, today I've got a couple of questions that are just going to help spur a bit of a kōrero between our 3 panelists, and we'll kind of work through those questions, and at the end we'll have a bit of time for a bit of pārtai from the team. But if you'd like to, feel free to kind of question or park your pārtai in the chat function, and that way we can kind of move into those at the end of the hui as well. So that's an opportunity for you if you want to put those thoughts that are coming up into the chat function, and we'll address them. If they're relevant to right there, we might kind of divert into it, but we'll see how we go. Ka pai? All right, so just kind of build a bit more context at te whānau. I'm just going to provide a couple of minutes for each of the panelists to share a little bit about the context of their kāhui that they've been involved in. So who are the members, how many, how long they've been going, what you've been doing. But also, is there a key purpose that you guys are trying to achieve as a kāhui? What would that key purpose look like? And how did your kāhui kind of come about? So we'll start off with Cathy, and then we'll go through to Kareena and Rina.
Cool. So I mentioned in my intro that this stemmed from the Making Sense of Supply Diversity workshop. So at that workshop, there was a good mix of buyer types, so customers, contractors and consultants. It was a great session because we each had to put our thinking caps on in terms of an action plan, how we were going to take away the learnings from the day and apply them within our own organisations. And part of that was, how do we continue the kōrero from that day, keep that live. And so, yeah, it grew from there into I think, started bi-monthly kind of get together with that core group. That group has grown from the initial cohort, I guess, but it still kind of remained that really nice balance of the, the client, consultant, contractor. And so we each bring our unique perspectives, I think, to the table there. And, we've all got our own internal barriers that we're trying to remove, but how do we help each other to, remove barriers maybe between ourselves? Yeah, so really it's around that, building that, continuing that connection, that peer sharing, and removal of barriers as best as possible.
Thanks, Cathy. Kareena, tell us a bit about your Kāhui.
Thanks, Paul. Gosh, I covered a little bit already, didn't I? Sorry. Yeah, so as started when I attended the Amotai conference last year, and I'd been kind of mulling it for a while because my previous experience at the Ākina Foundation, I knew that a community of practice was something really beneficial for all of the other all of the buyers that are trying to wrestle with some of these challenges, and recognizing that it's not a competitive environment. We're all trying to support each other. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do something similar when I moved into this new role at Greater Wellington, and the Kāhui framework that I saw Cathy present was perfect, really. So went away and started to. I also worked with Paul and Melanie Arno as well, who has all the contacts in the Wellington region of who should come. So she managed to connect me with all of the other councils and our counterparts there. And we've had about 4 meetings so far, also bi-monthly roughly. We've managed to pop out to each other's offices a few times, which is really nice. And next week will be one on the same day as our Wellington Meet the Buyer event, and we're hoping to work through a little bit more of what our purpose will be now that we've kind of gotten to know each other and our programs of work a little bit more, and what some of those challenges are, I suppose. Yeah, so I'm quite excited for that.
Kia ora, Kareena. And so just, Kareena, quickly, who are the councils that are a part of your Kāhui at the moment?
Good question. So we've got Wellington City Council, Hutt City Council, Porirua, and Kapiti Coast District Council as well as Greater Wellington, of course. We also have representation from Te Mataroa Maui, who are the regional for Māori economic development. So they come and have that overall lens as well. And of course, Amotai attend as well as a membership body.
Sure. Thanks for that, Kareena. Now, Rina, we're really excited to hear a little bit about the financial sector COP over there. So, yeah, all yours.
Yeah. Yeah, so our community of practice started, I think, about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3. And I think I missed the first meeting, but I was on the second. So, yes, definitely foundational member. I'm no longer in the sector, but I actually am still part of the union and very involved in different ways. So it was very organic. We didn't do the, traditional things of getting executive leadership buy-in, all that sort of stuff. It was the 4 big banks in Australia, plus me, the minnow. I was in Suncorp at the time. And we started just setting up regular communication, so every 3 weeks. And we bonded. We built some serious rapport. We essentially became a core foundational team. And then we thought, oh, geez, we better have some terms and conditions into how we interact here. And so ANZ lawyers drafted us a code of conduct, which was really lovely. And, I mean, other people will call it a charter or things like that. We did start off with one rule, which was, anything said in the forum stays in the forum. We had the ambition that we just wanted to do better at what we do. And instead of competing, in our little siloed sandboxes, we really wanted to lift the level of competition amongst us. And there, to be honest, in ESG, there is no competition. It's all about saving the planet, right? And we're talking about saving the same planet. But and people. And so, yeah, we just wanted to compete at a higher level and have. The other thing is it's quite an isolating job description, being a supply diversity specialist in an organisation. There's very rarely multiple, although I'm seeing that more nowadays. But back in those days, there weren't. And so the way of dealing with that professional isolation and lifting the benchmark and best practice was just to collaborate and talk to each other. So we did that, and then eventually we became such a cool group that a lot of other financial institutions heard about us and wanted to come in to the group. We met every 3 weeks, as I think I said, and for 45 minutes, and we really committed to it. And the people who turn up every single, like every single meeting, they become they just, yeah, become your industry greats, I guess. I don't know, not including me, but I mean, I said I was a minnow. So that's how we started, quite organically. I think, though, we had a few things in our favour, which we were really focused on our industry, and we were very clear as procurement professionals what we could and couldn't talk about. We would never want to destroy the reputation of a supplier, so all of our conversations were very positive, but we also knew of the challenges in the sector, and we wanted to talk about things like black cladding, which we're now, talking about with white sharking, and what do we do as a corporate to deal with that. Or we'd really talk openly about targets and our maturity in our strategy, even show each other some stuff, but that trust was built up over time. And anytime we got a bit off topic, we would always self-facilitate and throw, like, oh, let's meet on the side about modern slavery or something like that, and we'd introduce each other into each other's businesses as well. So yeah, it was a really beautiful thing, and it's stuck like.
Oh, cool. I think you just went on mute just that last part there, but no, thank you so much.
We stuck like glue. We
stuck
haven't,
like glue.
We'll never, we'll be friends for life.
Epic. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, ladies. Yeah, really good to get the context of the different ways and that organicness. And I think what you were speaking to, Rina, like the isolation. So it kind of like leads us into that second question that we have here. It's around, what does belonging to a Kāhui offer as opposed to working in silos? And, this is an interesting perspective, especially from the different Kāhui on the line. Who should join a Kāhui and why should people join a Kāhui? And so, yeah, Cathy, if you want to share what has belonging to the Kāhui been out to offer you in as a part of benefits towards that?
Yeah, it is definitely lonely work, being one of several squeaky wheels in the organisation. So yeah, it's that kind of sense of we're all in it together. I guess for me as well, it's having exposure to opportunities in the space that we wouldn't normally get access to. Things like having that supplier development workshop, Amotai helped us organise for our suppliers. Getting connected with Aotearoa and their Toiki Tour Māori internship programs. We got our first intern last summer and it worked out really great. So just kind of finding out about those sorts of things in my backyard has been really, really good. So yeah, I think the whole supplier and buyer connection piece is really important. And at the start, we did start off with a bit of a cadence where we had the buyer session, then the supplier and the buyer to bring that knowledge, from one session to the next. That's fallen off a little bit, but we do continue to engage. And I think either the Meet the Buyer in Tauranga here last year, we had a couple of suppliers come along just to talk, firsthand about some of their challenges with dealing with buyers, and that was really, really good. So yeah, that's probably been critical and great for me.
And that's a really cool whakaaro you shared around, for your Kāhui, you have started to, from the beginning, there was a korero around what's the capability, what are the barriers we're both facing. I remember we kind of worked through that. And as buyers, you were, talking about, some of the tender submissions and the pricing and some of these different things. And so as that intermediary, Amotai kind of, took that feedback and said, well, what do you guys need to learn about? What does a supplier kind of want to understand more in the procurement process? So that workshop came through. And it's great to hear that has kind of continued. There have been some of the suppliers that have come through to kind of share, hey, you know, we're in this space, this is what we do. These are some of the barriers that we find as we kind of try to work with you guys as a buyer. And so that's been a really good beneficial thing. And I loved how you also brought in there, you know, just some of the external groups that you may not know about that kind of support Māori and Pacifica businesses like Toi Kairoa and the apprenticeship program that they run, and then also you know, some, I think in Kareena, if you kind of share as well, you mentioned that you've got Te Mataroa Māui coming along to support. So yeah, for you, Kareena, what has it been like what has been the value and offering of you going to the Kāhui and the types of people that are attending your Kāhui at the moment?
I think, I mean, Rina and Cathy have really nailed it. Really similar for me, just that even in the beginning, having people that you can just reach out to and know that they're going to get you, and you don't have to like explain, you know, where you're coming from or why or anything like that. You can be like, look, I'm having this challenge, and you know, what have you done in this space that I could take and bring back to my organisation. So that's been really nice. You know, outside of that maybe more formal meeting, we do the odd email and you know just reach out to each other, and it's really nice to just have that group that you can know have your back, I guess, and give you a little bit of that uplift when you've been having a bit of a rough week or things haven't been going your way or whatever that is, which it does happen. You know, sometimes it can be quite a hard conversation to try and make some progress. So having that support is just wonderful.
And the element of what Melanie and Te Mataroa Māui when they attend, what kind of benefit do you see from them attending your Kāhui?
Yeah, well, Mel herself has amazing expertise in this space, so she always brings amazing lenses and really from that supplier perspective as well, and that wider economic development lens. So thinking about what are the outcomes that we're looking to achieve. You know, we've got our spend targets, for example, and then that flows through to spend with Māori businesses, and then what does that mean in the communities, and what do we, you know, since it's multiple councils and a whole region's economy, and the councils have a huge spend portfolio, what does that look like as a whole, I suppose, and making sure we're remembering what we're there for and what we might be able to do. Yeah.
And anything further to add, Rina, around you know, the benefit of coming together as opposed to working in silos?
Yeah, there was this really interesting thing that happened so I call us on entrepreneurs when we're working in an organization, trying to be change makers and hustle, and it's a hustle, right? But when my organization realized that all the other banks were leaning into this topic even further than what we were, there was a sense of kind of friendly competition. This is a non-compete space, but I'm just saying there was a sense of friendly competition. And then my execs knew I could get on the phone and ask about what was your actual, you know, financial figure target versus, you know, like what you published kind of thing, and to know if we were on the right track with our strategy and stuff. So it actually helped. So there were a few benefits of that. We were managing our risk in terms of what we were committing to as an organisation, because we had a really lovely transparent view of what was happening in other organisations. Now, you've got to remember too that the trust is really high, and it's an individual actions that build that trust, right? But also then there was this other thing was it actually we've got groups that are, you know, working with other banks and stuff like that, and they're getting this, you know, this peer-to-peer support and knowledge. So that then gave me more leverage internally with my execs, understanding how important it was and how much support and backing I had. Now, we had tried traditional ways of going through to the Australian Banking Association, so the ABA, and the ICA, which was the Insurance Council of Australia, to try and see if they could do some things. They responded well on modern slavery, but never supply diversity in the same way. And so we did go to those traditional groups, and because they're bureaucratic, they take many years to really lift the lobbying and awareness and advocacy in. So for us, we just moved stealth, we moved fast. We had protocols in place super quick without having 8 weeks of people to review the contractual agreement in terms of how we're going to interact. So it was almost like we created this power that hadn't existed before. So that's probably the one benefit that I think you will see over time. And sometimes people are a little bit afraid of that power. So you want to really counter that by being able to be transparent enough by saying, hey, well, why don't you come along to a meeting and see the content that we're, see what it is that we're discussing. But we don't take minutes and stuff like that. But, I'll say if there's any danger that you can see in the conversations, please let me know and I'll let you know how we mitigate that. So we would talk them through. But yeah, it just became this powerful force. And I would recommend that each industry kind of set up their own community of practice amongst your buyers, because the things that you want to tackle in that given moment are going to be different for each industry. Say we get hit with a whole stack of regulations, then we want to be able to deal with that. So yeah, there are massive benefits. There are also very personal benefits. I had someone to proofread my work before I was in, my strategy, or I had some support in terms of business cases. I had learnt from what the other advocates had tried in their organisations, and I knew what their lessons learnt were. And so I could apply that when I went to, create change in my org. So I put a lot into it, but I got a huge amount out of it. And I think that's a really important formula. When you go to do this thing, put a lot in, because you'll get a lot more out.
Beautiful. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think for our ones here in Aotearoa, we are still in our infancy. I think, the peer reviewing and the kōrero, the sharing and things have kind of happened in our Kāhui. I remember Tauranga City Council, they, shared that they were working on their policy around supplier diversity and social outcomes. And, we helped kind of just put little pieces in together, and then Mel was able to kind of present that back to us, and we're like, oh, that's an awesome win to see some of those things kind of dropping into that document. So yeah, that peer reviewing and peer sharing, definitely, but also having those opportunities to like what you were saying around the advocacy side of things, and also maybe the sector. It's really interesting because I know in our one in the BOP, Cathy, we've got some councils there, and we've got our corporates there as well, and the dynamic is a little bit it could be, I don't know, there may be conflict of interest of things like that, because they're the contractors, and the other ones are buyer suppliers. But what would the benefit of the construction whānau getting together, of Downer and JFC and Fulton Hogan and things like that, or how would that collaborative competitive nature kind of play out? Because we look down at great in the Wellington Kāhui, it is purely the councils. The councils are the only ones meeting down there to support and kind of share a regional vision of what they're trying to do. So yeah, really cool things to explore around that space that you've shared, Rina. Thank you. Yeah. Cool. So kind of moving into the next question, and it's going to get a little bit specific, but is there a specific example of value that you've gained personally or professionally from being a part of your Kāhui, or something that you would not have been possible without being a part of it? So yeah, is there a specific example, maybe from Cathy and from Kareena, and then Rina, if there's another one that you'd love to share, we'd love to hear that as well. Kath?
I guess for me, if you use the analogy of, a bridge between two worlds, so Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā, I guess this allows me to kind of walk along the bridge more often than I normally would. So I think having that exposure to Te Ao Māori has been really great for me personally and professionally, I think. That's allowed me to grow, I guess, my own cultural capital and hopefully bring some of that back to the organisation. So if I had to name one thing, it was probably that.
Kareena, anything from you around a specific example that's benefited you?
Yeah, I mean, as we say, we're pretty new, but so far, I mean, outside of having the people that I can call on if needed, a little bit of almost shortcutting. If I'm in a collaborative program of work with multiple councils, we can kind of talk to each other and say, oh, how are you going, and how can I help, and then take that back to our teams as well, which almost gives us a bit of oomph and a bit more action that we can take, which has been quite helpful, I would say. Yeah.
For me, two things from a practical sense in doing my role: speed. So I was able to develop a plan and execute it and know 20 steps ahead as to how it was going to be pushed back on, and what I was going to be told to try next, and understanding that others had tried those sorts of things and experienced different things, and that gave me a stronger argument. So, and implementing it operationally meant that I was more effective because I knew as to how others were trying it as well. And the other one was ikigai. So, when your professional life meets your personal life, and you go, holy geez, I've just had, after 20 years of working in corporate, I've just had that moment where my personal life collided. So as Aboriginal people, we have the three C's that are critical to us. Country is this good for the country the earth beneath my feet. Community is this bringing community in and they co-designing and being empowered by what it is I do. And culture is this in line with my cultural protocols, as in the laws and the values that we agree to adhere to. And in non-Indigenous worlds, that's your law and legislation. And then when I looked at this supply diversity and having this community of people with me, my community of practice, it was almost like my professional had met my personal. So that was personally something really beautiful for me. You do it. Yeah, I guess simply because of the topic, you find your people, and you find, as in your not Indigenous people, but I mean your people, your community, and you find your real place in your profession.
Beautiful. No, thank you for that. So wonderful to hear that, that experience coming through for you. I feel like that's been a bit of a, I think in the Kāhui that I've been kind of helping support, there has been some of those areas where people are kind of coming into, oh, this has been a great way to express, that this part of my role within a wider community. And that's kind of helped grow, that affinity towards, who we are and what we do in the profession and what we want. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Rina. Beautiful. Hey, I've only got one more question, then we might open it up. And so the final question that we have for our panelists are, what are your top tips for getting the most out of Kāhui, whether you're starting out or if you're a well-established group? So actually, you kind of might have answered some of those there, but yeah, what would you say would be some of the top things that you would recommend for those that will be starting to look at a Kāhui or start to attend a Kāhui? How would you get the most out of it? Kath?
I think in terms of starting it, it's around progression versus perfection. I think from what Kareena's talking about, just get the rhythm going and then kind of work on it from there. And I think the community of practice, the Kāhui, will set its own pace as well, and that will be, there'll be the people in the room setting that pace. So I think it's just around, that consistency, because consistency kind of breeds familiarity and trust, and building that trust as a group, which Rina's talked about as well today. So that's probably it from me, I think, and just being open to the fact that people have different levels of participation within the Kāhui. Some are there to listen, but others are there to share their expertise a little bit more, and being open to that as well.
Cool. Rina? Oh, Kareena, sorry, Kareena.
Yeah, I had a couple, two, maybe three. First one would be definitely know what you want to get out of it. No idea is a bad idea, but if everybody's on the same page, it'll make it a lot easier to move forward. And that includes, what's the focus of the Kāhui? Is it a industry? Is it a outcome area? Is it both? And that can help you to understand who should be involved, who are the members, and as part of that, understanding who the regional players are. For example, Te Mataura Māui Amotai, our iwi partners, how can they get involved and make sure all the right people are in the right spot as well. And then openness and I guess delivering results, whatever that looks like for the Kāhui, making sure that we're making a difference.
Sure. Rina, final things around the
Final
Kāhui for you?
things. Don't try to perform too early. So don't try to deliver a whole stack of stuff. You just put pressure on yourself, and your relationships are probably the most critical thing. And quite frankly, you just meeting and sharing ideas openly is enough. So there's that, because we met for a long time just helping each other get our day jobs done, and we made so much progress in our own individual organisations instead of coming up with this great idea that could be a photograph taken of and a article in a newspaper kind of thing. Having said that, one of the advantages is if you go to apply for an award, you've got people who have got your back and who will even help write it for you or on your behalf. So that was another cool thing that happened. But that confidence in we get too shy over here. But the other thing was really be mindful of your manage your membership. So there's some great theories about teams, and not everyone are going to be core players and put a lot into it. There'll be some who just observe. They're almost stalkers and they don't. Sometimes that can distract from the group being able to build momentum. So try not to grow too big too fast and keep it core. And my suggestion is, you might want to look at it in terms of, well, maybe we'll just sign people up for like a 2-year term max, and then we rotate out, which means that if they're going to drop out anyway, at least you can replace them, but also you can have, you can say just commit to 2 years and really give it your best shot, because you do need to, you want to commit and you want to turn up. And I think the other thing was promote each other. So be really fierce advocates of each other. Always talk about the work that's been happening over here and the thing that you heard, because it's a lot easier than advocating for yourself. I can definitely tell you that. But it just creates this incredibly positive vibe about it. And so honestly, there's a lot that gets put in the public forum. So very rarely are what we're talking about is actually purely a commercial and confidence topic, so just be really careful of that, because otherwise we think that we hide too much, not realizing it's already out there. And so really advocating for each other is so powerful. I think that was it. So I'll leave some time for questions if anyone. Hand it back to Paul, which is our beautiful facilitator.
Beautiful.
I talk too much otherwise.
No. Thank you so much, Rina. And I think with the quarter that's kind of come out today, even for our current Kāhui, there's some great learnings there to, like managing the members. Like, do we have the right group? Do we need to look at our Kāhui maybe in the BOP, Cathy, and think, okay, I understand what we're getting out of that, but maybe is there a more, beneficial way to go about our construction sector, or is it regional? I love that it's regional, but what does a construction sector Kāhui nationally look like, and how do we kind of implement that? Thank you for all the learnings and all the feedback today. Really just want to acknowledge our panelists for the sharing and the time as well, being able to, it's not always easy to get on a webinar or get in front of a crowd and speak openly and things. So I just want to commend all of our panelists for sharing that today. Definitely happy to open it up for any questions. I haven't seen. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Hilt, for our first question. But feel free. We've got some time here, whānau, to have a bit of open kōrero. So Hilda's put in a question. What advice would you give to buyers who are unsure if they have the time or resources to participate in a Kāhui/community of practice? Who would like to jump at that one first? What advice would you give to buyers who are unsure if they have the time or resources to participate?
I'm happy to jump in. If it's your own community of practice, then you can cap the time. I would just say, though, that if it's going to be that 3 weeks or once a month or just make sure you really prioritise it, because it'll fall over otherwise, because it's community of practices. The most important part is us and maintaining that one sense of purpose. To be honest, they're the only two elements that you need. I would say then too, there are more advanced community practices like leadership roundtables where we actually did an expression of interest for them first, asked them to commit, this is what we want you to commit, what else can you bring to the table? But we're asking really large organisations with big resources, right? And so there was a point to that, but also a huge amount of governance has to go into a group to maintain that. So I'd start real simple, real simple, and don't put pressure on yourself to deliver stuff. Maybe at the very most, and we didn't even have this to start with, was choose a topic for each month so that people know what they're bringing in terms of context and conversation. So choose a topic each month. Rotate the chair. You absolutely got to do that. You want as many voices sharing in the forum as possible. So self-facilitation is important where you don't talk too much like me. No. But I also bring energy, I know, but so just try and figure out ways to simplify it as much as possible.
Thank you, Rina. Cathy and Kareena, anything else to share?
No, nothing from me, I don't think. Ours is pretty it's not too much of a time commitment really. It's just getting together, every other month, and it's well worth the effort to do so, I think.
Go Kareena. Yep.
I was just thinking in addition to those thoughts that depending on your level in the organisation and how your role is structured, you might be able to request that it becomes part of your time if you're being quite a contributor or
true.
That sort of thing, like bringing it to your manager or whoever it needs to be and say, this is something I care about, how can I make it part of my role?
Yeah, that's a great insight. Thank you for that, Kareena. And I think with that kind of goes back to also, the document or the guidelines around the Kāhui that really helps to kind of, plead that case. It's like, hey, this is what the kaupapa of the Kāhui is. This is why we meet. And this is why I need to be a part of that. So that's also another good resource to help. I'll just add in there, it was great in our early days as Kāhui, that good kai from Māori Pacifica suppliers was provided as well. So that's always a good thing too. You get to utilize your local caterers to come together for a kōrero and a kai. Halfway. Junior's written in here, love hearing about the COP. Government agencies had one, but it died a slow death. The intent was there, but ultimately agencies had different priorities and some were at different stages of their journey. A change in government priorities also didn't keep up the great work, team. Oh, sorry, just a comment there. Kāpai, all goods. And Missy just said, is it okay doing online as well as in person? I mean, actually, yeah, because Cathy and Kareena, we always do in persons most of the time, don't we? Like we do provide people to join in online. And I think, but Rina, like yours is predominantly online, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does. Yep, go.
I was going to say community practice with the 300 suppliers. That was all online, 90 minutes every 2 months. It was heavy, and I did a lot of the talking, unfortunately, and it's really hard to build interaction there. Yeah. Our finance community practice was like 5, 6 people, and then became maybe max 10. So that was always online because we're all in different cities. But the leadership roundtable one is different. You want to have 3 online and 1 face-to-face. Again, you're talking management levels, C-levels, executive level roles. They can all fly somewhere. They've got travel budget, and meeting face-to-face is not a big deal, but it's quite a beautiful moment to wrap up the work and to really get that high visibility stuff. Our community of practice in the finance group was a bit more stealth, way under the radar, because we wanted to have more intimate discussions. So the smaller you are and the more under the radar, the more intimate your discussions. The high level, the more it gets prepared and scripted and things like that. Sure, so how you design your community practice changes everything. So these beautiful government agencies, I wonder if it depends how you got to figure out how to glue them all together, you know, like, okay, you think about the timeline and the calendar. Is everyone having to write their strategic plans at that time, or, you know, whatever? And then so you have a show and share of your strategic plans amongst your government agencies, or whatever you can afford to make public. So the minute you start talking on those terms, people might actually see a reason to show up and represent. But yeah. How about we had a hybrid model depending on your community of practice. Again, perfection. You're not hitting perfection, you're just trying to hit progress, which I love that lovely comment from Cathy before.
Yeah, I've written that one down too. Progression versus perfection. That was great. Junior's just written here, are all the attendees of the COP in your COP, are they in dedicated supplier diversity or ESG roles, or do they wear multiple hats? Cathy?
Good question. I'd say the majority are probably wearing multiple hats, like myself. Yeah, a few are operational, some are, you know, office-based, but I wouldn't say many are, dedicated in the space. Good question.
How about you, Kareena? Because you mentioned a bit in your introduction that yours is quite a good space. Yeah,
we're all related to procurement in some way. So I'm a dedicated role, but my other counterparts are either procurement advisors or business and economy specialists. So we're all kind of doing it, well, not me, I guess, but on top of the day job and seeing what we can achieve. And I do my best to share resources and things like that as well when it's helpful.
Yeah.
across the ditch, Rina. Yeah.
Mine was a third of my role. third of a third, I say. So I had supply management and governance and all of those things under my hat, sitting in the policy team. And then ESG was a third, and then supply diversity, as you know, is another third. You know, like, so. But what I would do is I'd actually, which was great because I was never going to be the only person being able to do supply diversity. So my strategy immediately had to be, how do I light the fire in other colleagues of mine who can go do this sort of stuff, like in those engagements in the contracts. So I always had my executive saying to me, Rina, you're not meant to do the work. And I'm like, okay. And I'd go quietly and coach them through how to do the work. But then I had someone who was like trained in order to do it. And then I'd say, pass it on, you know? So that's, but yeah, so it wasn't a dedicated role. I did have others in other organisations who, the big four have dedicated roles and sometimes multiple, and that was a resource that I just could not, like, there was no way. But I think sometimes in some ways it actually created a strategic advantage for me because, again, I had to light that fire amongst colleagues and said, you know, the only problem is when they've got so many things competing, they might put it at the very bottom of the list. You got to figure out how to a way to get them so excited about the topic that they actually want to do that thing first, right? Instead of doing all the other boring stuff in their procurement day jobs, which, you know, not saying that procurement's boring after 18 years of doing it, but just saying. So whereas when it was a dedicated role of the other organisation, they'd go, oh yeah, this is supply diversity, you can go do that. So they had to really work hard to get themselves incorporated into the other business units and lines of business, and where, you know, decisions were really being made for reals, you know. I hope that makes sense.
No, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And it kind of, I guess, segues, and we'll take this as our last question. Thank you, Mariano. In what way and frequency do you keep LT across the corridor and the activities of a COP or a Kāhui, if at all? Do you want to kick this one off, Rina? Because I don't know. I don't think it's happening much. And then if Cathy and Kareena have anything to add,
I have multiple strategies, communication strategies. So I had a supplier and diversity committee chaired by my CEO, and he would get regular updates. They only met once a quarter, and so there would be formal comms. But if it was like really fun, juicy stuff that was going to excite the, competitiveness, I'd have different messages for my category managers, my exec manager. I'd give her, a little bit of an inside view as to what's going on for people at her level. So it depended on the change I was trying to generate and the things that were most relevant to them to keep them the most excited. But formal communications were not difficult. I'd just throw in, remember I had a supply management community practice, so I would throw in relevant updates. Oh, did you know that CBA and ANZ and NAB and Westpac are all doing these things? Just there was an announcement today. And I'd use that as an opportunity to highlight the work happening across the community of practice. And that was all public information. So it was okay to broadcast with 300 people. What you might want to share with your category team was a bit different. I also made sure that my category teams got to meet their counterparts in the banks. And I just hoped that they would forge a great relationship where they could, but that doesn't always happen because, you've got to really commit. But just them knowing who their counterparts were, so who was managing fleet or who was managing construction or who was managing, coffee or whatever across the other organisations was really helpful. And I'd hope that they at least met on LinkedIn, had a meet and greet, got to talk about their categories and do some shares at that level, and then, so I tried to cultivate relationships amongst my organisation with other organisations, like for like. Hope that answers the question a bit.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Ladies, anything else to add? What?
I think our leadership team know that we're doing it, but we're not formal enough that we do any regular reporting. I do general reporting on progress against our social procurement strategy, and I've put a few photos in when we've taken photos when we've managed to meet in person and things like that. But other than that, it's pretty casual.
Cool. Kath?
Yeah, just similarly, we have a internal kind of hui across all our lines of business within Downer. We meet with Jenna, the lovely Jenna, monthly. So I bring stuff to the table when I can to that. But other than that, yeah, possibly know about it, but could do some more formal reporting potentially.
Awesome. Well, hey, no, I think we'll call it there, te whānau. He mihi mahana mihi maioha tino kia koutou, tātou pai. Cathy, Rina, and Kareena, thank you so much for being able to come online and share your expertise to close out our bio-webinar series. Really appreciate the whakaaro today. I think just a closing kōrero from Amotai that I spoke with Anna before earlier today was in regards to COPs and Kāhui moving forward. We, as Amotai, we definitely want to encourage that. And we do have a couple of frameworks. We've got our lovely financial services sector guidelines document that they've given us as well. And so you can kind of utilize some of the, the resources that we do have. Moving forward, we want to get more happening. Our involvement in the running and the day-to-day of a Kāhui, it may not be in our capacity. So we definitely want to hand that baton over to our buyer members to actually, let's get this construction Kāhui going, let's get this professional services Kāhui going, and let's encourage one of our colleagues to take the baton on that and to kind of run for it. And we are here as a resource to kind of support, the uplift of it all and whatever we can. So just kind of putting that out there for those that have really enjoyed the kōrero and think, actually, I want to be a part of a Kāhui. This is how I want to get things going. Really encourage that. Come and join, speak to us. We can give you the resources, help you in those initial steps. But I really feel like one of the key lessons we've learned today is actually, having that guideline document and the purpose clearly documented, so you guys know what you're showing up for every week or every time you meet. And so I think we can definitely kind of support that. And then once that's up and running, handing the baton over to our buyer members to kind of really run with the operation of that Kāhui. So just a bit of a kōrero from Amotai to round us up. But thank you again, everybody, for showing up today. And I'll close out very, very quick karakia and then let you to the rest of your day. Me noi tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ata whaia tō tātou ariki, ahu karaiti, me te aroha te atua, me te whiwhinga taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake tonu ake, āmene. Kia ora. Thank you once again, ladies, and thank you everybody for jumping on. Kia pai te rā.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora.
It was
day,
a
everyone.
pleasure. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Rina. Thanks, Cathy. Thanks, Kareena. Ka pai says, all good.
Good stuff. Good stuff, I reckon.
Yeah. It was good to have Rina. I think she really kind of Juliana.
She had.
Hey,
Really
Juliana.
I jumped in on
Yeah.
one of your last sessions. I thought it was really valuable, really good. I really love Rina, just saying.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was good
I
for her
kind
to
of
bring
resonate
that
with what she's talking
experience.
about, even though I'm not the
Mm.
Amotai that, So thank you so much. I'll leave you guys now.
No,
Cool.
thanks,
Thanks,
Juliana.
Yeah. No, I think that's some good things for us. We might have to
Yeah.
cut this part off on the
Oh,
recording.
yeah.
Make sure you
Oh,
make sure you edit the recording.
forgot that. Yeah, and I forgot to start the recording. I even had written it down. Record. Yeah, so
Oh,
it missed the karakia and the opening, but yeah, I'll figure out a place to start it from that makes sense. Yeah, cool.
Well, hey, I'll check in again, but I've just got to get to another hui now. Okay.
Yep, all good. Okay.
All right. See ya.
Well done. Good work. Bye.
Bye.